Hey everyone, Pastor George here with our Wednesday Bible study recap. And today we're doing a recap of the whole third chapter of the book of James. I'm in a different location because we're getting our heat worked on. So I had to move upstairs to the old library. But anyway, so our book today is the book of James, chapter 3. And in this is all about the tongue. And this is one of those things, like, remember what I talked about at the beginning when we discussed the book of James? We talked about how it was like the New Testament Proverbs. Well, that's pretty much what this is all about. This is all very helpful, normal information in order to uh, help people live their Christian lives, right? But James has really high standards, and I think that that's why it's so difficult to kind of see how all of this flows together. Um, so one of the things that James is really big on is how the human tongue is impossible to control. And if you've ever been in situations, right, where you've maybe said something or done something that you regret, you understand this completely, right? He actually compares it to be easier to tame a horse and to steer a ship than it is the tongue. And he actually also mentions or gets at the idea that those things are a lot more powerful than a human, right? A horse can like kick us in the face and we'll die. A ship is incredibly difficult to like a huge thing compared to us, but you can steer it with a small rudder. And so the tongue and likewise controls the body. It's like a gateway into the heart type of thing. And so he really hits us on that, right? And I think that this kind of gets at this idea of one part of our life being able to enter into other parts. I mean, he uses the idea of staining here, right? He talks about how the tongue stains. And I think that like that, what does a stain do, right? Well, a stain ruins something, right? And it spreads. So if you drop a liquid, right, it spreads along the surface. It's very rarely that it just stays in one place. And so that's what he's getting at here. He's getting at this idea that the tongue, as powerful as it is able to stain all these things. So that's where he spends the majority of his beginning talking about, right? And it's interesting that he would choose this because I think what he has in mind, right, is, yeah, he has the average believer in mind, but he specifically has teachers in mind, right? That's how 3:1 starts, right? It says that not many of you should wish to become teachers. And so this is, yes, a something for general Christians, but it's especially directed at people like me and it's at other Christian leaders who's saying, you know, this is a really something you need to be careful with. I mean, I've learned this lesson myself, but something you have to be careful with as leaders, how you use your words, because that can end up really misleading people or bring great harm. And of course, like, you know, James here, it's not a maybe a harm is the right word, but it can also be a wrong word, right? It's not about like not making people feel bad. That's not what this is. But it's about wrong teaching, and if you make and sinning against people by using your tongue, right? It's not like James here is pulling any punches when it comes to using kind of harsh language to get his point across. So it's not that idea, but it's at this idea that you have to, when you're speaking, you have to be very conscious of what you're going to say and the ideas that you're communicating. And so anyway, he moves from that to talking about wisdom. And he talks about wisdom from above, right? And I think this is again, this is like right from Proverbs, this idea of wisdom, right? And I like he contrasts two things. He contrasts the world with heaven, right? So there's heavenly wisdom, which is what we are able to pick up from Scripture and be able to apply into our lives from that, right? Things that come from God, wisdom that comes from God, and then there's wisdom from the world, and that doesn't mean like stock option, like what stocks to buy and what not. That's not what James is talking about as worldly wisdom or like street knowledge. That's not what he's talking about. What he's talking about is wisdom that comes from earthly sources. And while it may be helpful, right, a lot of it like just ends up being grafted by worldly desires in order to satisfy those things. And so James is like, no, that's bad, right? If you do that, you're going to end up falling into these things. And then he ends up saying that what does wisdom produce? Well, it produces peaceableness, gentleness, being open to reason, mercy, and good fruits, and being impartial and sincere. So he paints us a picture of what a person who's influenced by wisdom from above looks like. And you'll realize that that's it's not an exact list, right? Not close exactly, but it's very similar in a lot of aspects to Paul's fruits of the Spirit, things that he talks about, right? And so I think that, like, again, there's this connection between James and Paul when it comes to having the faith and then seeing how that is lived out in your life. And those two things come together. So all that's to say is this is James's first big challenge for us, right? Is to be on watch for our tongue as people who speak and teach especially, but also to not turn towards the world for wisdom, but to turn to God. So I hope that you guys have a wonderful rest of your Wednesday. I'll see you next Wednesday for our Bible study recap and another thing of a new thing tomorrow. So I'm excited for that. I'll see you guys later. Peace out.